you should be proud of all your accomplishments and you should wear it around because it motivates other soldiers to go after it too.
Someone cares about you.
There's a reason why your heart is beating.
You still have a purpose.
Don't give up.
It's important to know that you're not alone.
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
You are not alone.
Today's guest is Army First Lieutenant Aline Samara. She's an accomplished competitive athlete, a volunteer coach for judo and wrestling, and the first woman from Hawaii to become an Army Ranger. Allie, thank you so much for coming on the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me, Danny. It's a pleasure to be invited.
Absolutely. We rarely have current active duty service members on the podcast. However, I know that your story is just too good not to share with our audience, and I know that you have a lot to offer. So I'd love to start from the beginning. Would you tell me what it was like growing up out here in Hawaii?
So growing up in Hawaii, actually, I had a blast. I mean, sometimes I take it for granted just being being on the island is, you get that island fever, but I actually, looking back at it, it was a great time. Like, you have like the beach there, you have so many hiking. But like, I feel like what was more important to me, just growing up in Hawaii, is just like, that family, like ohana vibes that you experience with like not just your family, like your immediate family, but like also like your extended family and also your friends. So I just really appreciate all of that, because when I moved to the mainland, it was kind of more of like my transition from being like very like close to my family where I saw them every day to moving to Colorado and or going to college and wrestling at college. And it was like more like individually, like it was more individual base, I would say. So my experience was like, I really enjoyed it. I mean, like every other kid or any kid that grew up in Hawaii or just anywhere, like you have your hard times, but I mean, if you just look hindsight 2020 or just be positive and look at the positive outcomes or the good stuff, then it's not that bad, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, we've been out here for almost 2 decades, and one of the things that we've come to love about living here in Hawaii is that sense of community, giving back, and surrounding ourselves with positive people. Like, obviously, the environment is one to be desired with the oceans and the mountains in the same place, but really, like you had mentioned, the extended family, the ohana that we come to bring ourselves to be a part of while we're out here is really amazing.
Yeah, it's definitely a good feeling, and it's really good like values to grow up with too.
Absolutely. Now, I know that you did a lot throughout your youth in terms of sports and whatnot. Has physical activity and team sports always been kind of a part of your life?
I would say so. I mean, my dad, not just my dad, my parents, my mom and my dad, they just like wanted us to be more active. I remember my mom would just like kick us out of the house and just be like, go play with the kids in the neighborhood. And we're like, okay, like stop, like, basically saying like, stop being a lazy bum, like stop being in the house and just go outside. But I joined like my parents, put me in soccer when I was like 5. I remember I wanted to play soccer when I was 4, but I was too young. So I think from like a very early age, I loved sports or just being outdoors, having like a lot of like physical activity. So, and to this day, I mean, I still I actually compete jiu-jitsu. So I'm still doing it. I'm still like competing. So I'd say like it's a big part of my like of who I am, just having that, just being competitive and just always like trying to get better every day.
Right on. With that competitive spirit, how did you end up finding yourself signing up for the National Guard and eventually becoming an Army soldier?
I just had like a really good track record in wrestling in high school, leading up to college. So I got invited to train at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, Colorado. So I mean, I had some tough days in the practice room, and I'm not saying like I was like the best. I wasn't like number one in my weight class. I was definitely like ranked, but I remember there was like World Cup happening like for 2015. It's a big year. That's why for wrestling, because it just sets the tone for the next year, which is Olympic year. 2016 was Olympic year. So I just remember, I mean, like my coach or the training center coach, Terry Steiner, he just made me sit out of practice because like they didn't really need me. Like I wasn't good enough. I wasn't top three. So I kind of like sat on the bike, the stationary bike, kind of tearing up. I'm like, wow, I'm not even good enough for a practice right now. And one of like she's a veteran now, but she wrestled for WCAP. She was like a world medalist, Lee Janes. She invited me to practice at WCAP, which is at Fort Carson, Colorado, and I just liked just the push. I really liked the intensity there, and just like how they like kind of like welcomed me and their family. So I wrestled for them for a little bit before I swore in. And sworn in to the Colorado National Guard in 2015. And then I wrestled under WCAP while serving in the Colorado National Guard as a 35 Fox, which is a all-source intelligence analyst. So that's how I got that transition into the Army, was through wrestling.
That's a really interesting path. And I really don't want to gloss over the fact that you were training with future Olympians from USA. Like, that's a huge accomplishment. So what was it like getting to wrestle with the world-class athlete program and then going from this sport that you love to then enlisting?
I liked it. It reminded me of like my high school wrestling practice. That's why. It was just very like intense. It was very like pushing your partner, your practice partner, to the point where like they want to like give up, basically. Like you're breaking people just to build them up. Like that's what they want to see. I'd say like that's just like how the Army is in general. Like you go through basic training, they break you, they break the bad habits, and then they shape you the way they want to shape you, like more team oriented, or just like putting all that fear and all that mental, like whatever you're thinking physically, like what's like being pain, you can still push through. So I really like appreciated what WCAP like put me through, in the sense like it wasn't easy, but like it made my mind, my confidence like improve so much. But yeah, my wrestling coach back in high school, he was also an Army wrestler before WCAP was a thing. And he was also, his name is Coach Chuck Kaluakakui. But he was an actual, like, he was in Ranger Regiment. So he was a Ranger as well. So really followed his footstep. And I felt like going towards WCAP was like a way that I can follow his footsteps.
Now, you bring up the Rangers. I mean, you seem like a very goal-oriented individual. And so not only did you get to WCAP, but then you joined the Army. And eventually you set your sights on becoming a Ranger, especially at a time when women Rangers were being allowed to have that position now. What was that experience like, being one of the first women to become a Ranger, and then being the first woman from Hawaii to take that step?
I just thought of it as like another goal of mine. I didn't think of like being a woman, because like I was already in a sport where like where women were kind of like, not, I don't want to say looked down upon, but it was really male dominant sport. So I was just used to it already. But this goal of mine, being a Ranger, it all started when I got to basic. I just saw my drill sergeants with like Ranger tabs. And I was like, and I knew my coach was a Ranger too. And I was like, man, like I really want that tab. Like that looks cool. Like it's really badass. It's like a really big accomplishment in the Army. And I remember going to AIT, and then there's that Ranger Regiment recruiter, because the MOS I had, like they take analysts and they can like put them through RASP and then send them to Ranger school. So it was like me and this other girl. Her name was Chambers, her last name. We both went to talk to the recruiter. And this was like back in 2016. And he looked at us. He's like, we only take female officers. Like, we don't take any junior enlisted, and just ended it. Did not even like give us like the time of day after that. Like, so I went back to formation, and I was just like, you're saying that I have to be an officer in order to like get to my goal. So after a while, I was like, I think I want to be an officer. So so that was like, I've always had that goal to become a ranger or go through ranger school. And it's just because like, I just knew like whenever you saw someone with a ranger tab, like you just knew like this person was badass.
So in order to become a ranger, you had to become an officer first, as a female, that is?
Back in the day, yes. So the way that they were doing it was, so the first two females I graduated were like first lieutenants, like promoting to captain. That was like back in 2015. So then 2016, you actually can see the stats on like our female ranger group, Facebook group. But like they show each year, like how many females have passed that fiscal year. And so 2015 was like, I think about 5, I think. I could be wrong. I could totally be wrong. But the year that caught my attention was 2016, because 2016, no females passed. Like the way that they did it, going back to that, is that they wanted to see the officers pass. And then after the officers, it was the NCOs. So they eventually start going down. But by the time I became an officer, the first enlisted female passed, like junior enlisted. So I was like, oh, that's great. Like, awesome. Really good for her. But I was like, man, I became an officer, like for mostly that reason. Because I mean, I went combat arms. Like, like I was like, yeah, I really want to go to ranger school, and I just felt like not only that, it was just like being an officer. Like I felt like there's more impact I can like.
But that's also a really incredible thing to achieve when you're enlisted. Like I know there are programs for officer to enlisted, but I remember, at least when I was enlisted, making the time for school, balancing a social life, and still just doing the day-to-day job. That's a tremendous amount of effort. How did you find balance in your life during that period of becoming an officer?
Yeah, so in ROTC, so I like went to Hofstra ROTC, so I was not even at that school. Like I attended like a different school, like it was SUNY Old Westbury, and I used to live in Jersey the first year, and like all the cadre was tracking that. Like even my MS3 instructor, which is now my mentor. So I just remember like waking up like 4:00, 4:20, like leaving the house at 4:25, driving to Long Island. Like that's like a 50-minute drive without traffic. And I'd get there just in time for me to just take a nap in the car right before PT. And I joined ROTC as an MS3, so my junior year, because I was already enlisted. So you can start like junior year of college. And so the summer before your senior year, your MS4 year, you have to go through advanced camp, and people make sure like your PT is like squared away, like you're good on tactics, like you're just good as like all your individual soldier skills, you're physically fit, and like you can like how to do tactics. So that was like a very crazy year for me. So not only that, like I had to go to PT like at 06. And mind you, like Force Com, it's like 06:30 PT. So like we were doing PT like a half an hour before like like Forrest Gump. I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. So that, and then like I'd spend all day in Long Island just going to classes. And after, I would coach college wrestling. Like I was the associate head coach for a JUCO college. It was Nassau Community College for the women's team. And I just remember there were days where it was just so like, it was so harsh on me because like you're just pulling, like I wouldn't get back home till like 10. So those were like, I didn't really like learn how to time manage until that year, because I was pulling a full-time job. I was pulling full-time status for school, and I was doing ROTC, and we do FTXs, and we do labs, and we do like 5 weeks in summer, like advanced camp. Like, so like for those cadets, like some of those cadets are like not only dealing with all like I had to deal with, but they're also taking care of their family too. Like they have kids, because some of them are like green to gold, like prior enlisted, like, so they're just making that transition too. And it's like, I mean, I learned a lot from that year, and that was like 2018. So
That's absolutely incredible. And it sounds like you really set yourself up to say, hey, like I want to do this and I'm going to find a way. Where do you feel like this grit comes from that you seem to possess?
I would say my parents, like my mom, my dad, my stepmom. I mean, they really putting like in our minds like to not really feel sorry for yourself when things got tough, and maybe that's just old school, but like my dad had a really like harsh childhood, I would say, just from the stories that he would tell me. And then, like going through some rough times in the family, just like during like my parents' divorce. But I would say the root of like my like how I am, how my way of like perceiving things and my mindset is from my family and from my high school wrestling coach. If it wasn't for them, like I'd probably be in that mindset where I just like feel like the victim, or when going got tough, like it's okay to give up type mentality. But I just like I got so fortunate.
Yeah, no, completely understandable. It's really easy to get lost in this the world is against me mentality when things get hard. And it's really important to have people around us that aren't necessarily telling us to just like suck it up and deal with it, but pointing us and guiding us in that proper direction. And I know with everything that you do, like it seems like you don't do it just for yourself and like selfish ambition. But I was listening or reading one interview that you had given, and you had mentioned becoming an Army Ranger was important to you because of the impact that you can have on those coming after you. And I know, like as a volunteer coach for wrestling and judo, like a large portion of teaching others and being a leader in the military is about the person that you're taking care of, the person that you're leading. And so how are you currently growing as a leader and raising up junior soldiers and athletes?
So I'll speak on the military side first. When I got out of Ranger school, so many people wanted to hear my story. Like, how'd she do it? She is so short. Like, I'm like 4'11", so I'm just like, I was like, the ruck was like half my size. I could fit in the ruck, but people were just like, how? But it's really about like how you make yourself appear. Say like I remember my dad, like one time I was like walking with like a slouch, and it wasn't just like 1 or 2 days. It was like for like months on end. And like, he told me like stand up straight. And like, and then after that, like, it's not like because like, it's just like, like your attitude or whatever. It's just like, after a while, like when people saw me walk, it's like, they saw like confidence, like how you appear. And like, I feel like appearance is like always like a good way for me to just like set like a way to influence, because I mean, that's the first thing you see is just appearance before you speak. And like, at first I was like, maybe I shouldn't wear like all my badges or any of my tabs, my tab. I mean, like just go slick because like I don't like to boast really. Like I like to just keep to myself, more so. But I'm like, no, like you should be proud of like all your accomplishments and you should wear it around because it motivates other soldiers to go after it too. So I'm very open to like any female that wants to go through Ranger School and wants to hear my story and like how I trained up for it, like what it was like through all the phases of Ranger School, and then like that's basically it. Like how to mentally, physically, and like intellectually like get prepared for the school. And so I joined this Facebook group. It's like Ranger School candidates, and it's like all the females that passed Ranger School, that like failed Ranger School, like are going to like. So a lot of like, we all are numbered right now. So like all the Rangers, all the female Rangers have a number. So I'm Ranger 80.
Oh, wow.
There's like about, I think I could be wrong, but like there's like up to like 116, 118. So we passed we passed that point where we've already hit like 100. But I'm pretty sure any of us, like the 116, 118 of us are willing to share our story, like get that next female, that woman prepared, because it takes a lot to just go after it, like a goal like Ranger School, and like you're shaving your head, like, it's kind of like one of those schools, like you have to be all in if you're going to go through the Malvesti gate. So so that's like another way I like reach out and like lead by example mainly. And like when you said the wrestling and the judo, I kind of just try to give back as much as I can. That's more of like a fun sense though. Like we're having fun, like, of course, like the other coaches introduced me to like the kids and stuff, like this is my accolades and stuff like that. But like I want those kids to make sure they're having fun before thinking about anything else performance wise, because like you shouldn't be thinking about performance based. Like I shouldn't inflict that on you. It should be more self-inflicting. Like if you want to get after it, you go after it. But like I'm not going to tell you like I'm not going to coach you if you didn't place top 3 at this tournament. Like I'm not like that whatsoever. Like you come into a wrestling practice, like not show up for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and come back. Like I'm still going to coach you, like, so that's just my approach on it.
Right on. I mean, when you were sharing about how your parents had told you about your slouch and correcting your posture and carrying yourself a certain way, it reminded me of a conversation that I had when I moved in with my dad the first time when I was 12 years old, and I hung my head and I talked with mumble and I didn't really like this is kind of the attitude that I had, and for a year straight, in order for me to interact with my stepmom, she made me look her directly in the eye and articulate every single syllable of every single word I spoke to her for a year.
Oh my gosh.
But it's completely changed. It made me lose my Jersey accent from when I had grown up in Jersey, and made me start feeling differently about myself. Gave me a little bit more self-confidence. So when I see people hanging their head or not being really not proud, but more confident in the things that they're doing, having a positive impact in their life, I really try to encourage others, like what you're doing is amazing. Graduating college or graduating high school, for some, I've had friends like get their GED, and we show up in droves to celebrate just that accomplishment. And then the next part that I kind of see as a pattern in your life is once you achieve one of your goals you set out, it seems like you put another one back on your plate, whether that's coaching another person or whatever. And one of the things I see with veterans is the military is no longer kind of driving us to achieve that next goal, whether it's deployment or a PFT. And so like setting goals, even just small achievable ones, like going and coaching a person to make sure that they're showing up. Have you noticed any other kind of like patterns in your life that help you through transitions, whether it's moving to a new duty station or starting a new avenue in your career?
Yeah, so I'm actually dealing with a transition right now. So I got picked up for. So I don't know if people know much about Fort Campbell, but it's home of the 101st Airborne Division. So it's an air assault division basically. So we are the premier Army school for air assault. So at TSAS, so like the Sobolewski Air Assault School. I just found out like yesterday that I got selected to be the air assault OIC for TSAS. So you have to be selected for these positions. So I got selected. Um, so that's a transition I'm kind of currently going through. And my outlook is like I'm excited, but I'm also nervous. Like I don't know what this position entails, but like people are like, you're gonna crush it. Like it's like you can do it. Like it's a doable position. Not necessarily saying it's an easy position, but it's you're like the face of the organization. Like each school, like Air Assault, Pre Ranger Course, Pathfinder, like they all have like an OIC, and we all get selected for it. So my I catch myself sometimes like saying don't like mess this up, because like you get recommendations, you mainly get recommendations, and like it's not just you that you're carrying through those doors, it's your previous organization. Like so my cavalry squadron I'm coming from, like I'm representing them based on my hard work. So like not only like you have to be on top of on top of your own performance, but you gotta look at the bigger pictures that like people helped you get to this position, and the way that you give them like thanks is to like make sure like every day you give it your all.
Now, I know, mission first mentality is vital for our military service members, but it can also start to become taxing on our mental health. I mean, for the last 8 years or coming up on 8 years for yourself, have you noticed any shift in the way that the Army has been dealing with the soldiers' mental health issues that may arise as they're going through their career?
I would say like my troop right now that I'm currently in, I think they do a really good job with like making sure like whatever you're dealing with, you seek help. And if it's just like, oh, like I need to go, I gotta go back to my house and like, make sure that the cable guy or the internet guy is like, you literally just got back. Like, make sure you like set back at home. Like we can always cover down, that type of mentality. Like, and it goes with your mental health as well, not just the internet guy, but like it was just like an example.
Absolutely no. But those are like some very basic stresses that come up in our day to day life, right? Like not everything is so drastic in terms of life and death, but little stressors also add up. Making sure that the bills are taken care of when we go on deployments and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Before we depart and say our farewells, Allie, is there any advice that you would like to give to somebody that's currently struggling with their mental health?
I would say like to really reach out. I mean, I've dealt with some this could be dark, but like I've dealt with like a suicide in my life like a couple of times. One was a complete stranger, and then the other one was it was like a friend that I used to go to his house, his apartment when we were both stationed at Fort Benning, and like you don't really see it coming until it's already too late, But I would say like whatever you're like dealing with, I would like when I'm going through stuff, like I have to like say it out loud, like to the person like I love or whatever. Like, yeah, they might judge me, but like I know if they care about me, they'll like make sure I'm okay or make sure that they'll stay by my side. Um, but yeah, I would say like the best thing you could do is like really reach out to your community. Community, like if it's a small community like your family or like just one friend, and you don't want to go through like anything. Like I know for military, like it's always like, oh, if you go to EBH, it's going to be on your record and stuff like that. Um, I think just going to someone like your battle buddy or one of your like, you know, close friends, that goes a long way. So I would say like that's what helped me through my my 8 years of being in the military. So I'm still, still dealing, like, even though I'm pretty confident and I like, like don't feel sorry for myself or whatever. There are times where I get into that dark, the darkness, and it's okay. It's being human. It's what we go through. That's life, but life is just so much more awesome when you go, overcome it. So
Absolutely. I mean, it's so important to bring light into that dark area and telling somebody that you know, love, and trust. And I always encourage people to start sharing with people and building those relationships really early on as well. Let them know as things arise, because the more that we just sit on these dark thoughts, the stronger they'll get, and will delay learning how to cope with them in a healthier way.
yes, for sure. I don't know if people like go through this, but like whenever I have like a dark moment, I feel like I'm in a sense of autopilot mode. It's kind of weird, but like I don't feel like myself. So if you notice those trends, like you should really like go to someone, like, because those are those moments where when you're not yourself, then things can go like pretty bad. So I would say like really like make sure like you're self-aware of like what you're going through.
How did you become self-aware of those autopilot moments? Like what triggered you to start recognizing them?
I noticed the lead up to it. I'd be very overwhelmed. Like, and that's what you notice in the military, when you have all these priorities, like you have all these things that you have to complete, like, like closeout criterias or like just like daily tasks or big training events, but like there's no prioritization. Everything's a priority. Like everything's the main priority and you just feel overwhelmed. That's why I noticed like I would go into autopilot mode and just like not myself. And it's to the point where I'd just be like crying, like just because like how down I would feel. I would just feel like overworked. And that's when I notice. But it could be like different triggers for other people. But that's the parts where like when you're in that autopilot mode, you're just kind of like, this is scary. Like, like I don't want to get into like certain details, but there are times where I'm like, wow, I'm glad I like snapped out of it. But yeah, it's something like I've noticed, and like dealing with certain suicides in my life, from like strangers and friends. I could see why like certain things can escalate. So de-escalate it.
Well, I really appreciate that, Ali. Thank you for that insight for our listeners to just look out for some of those feelings of overwhelming as they arise, and begin addressing them, especially by sharing it with somebody that you love and letting them know that like, hey, this is how I feel, and I don't want it to progress beyond this, and asking for help. So thank you very much for just opening up and sharing a little bit of that for us.
Yeah, no problem.
It's been such a pleasure getting to know you and hear your story. Congratulations on your upcoming transition. I hope that it goes well for you, especially as you prepare for captain's course.
Yeah, thank you. It is kind of nerve-wracking it sometimes, but like I know, just like any other like goal I had or position I've had, like it'll buff. Like just keep going forward.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us here on the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast. It's been a pleasure.
It was a pleasure.